May 2nd, 2011, 1:15 a.m. You're sitting at a one-bedroom apartment in Dubai, eating cold leftover biryani straight out of the container. CNN is on mute in the corner. A red breaking news bar slides across the bottom of the screen. You drop the spoon. You don't move for 40 seconds. You forget to breathe. The biryani goes cold on the floor because the man on TV, the most wanted human being in the history of the world, is dead. And you, sitting in your underwear at 1 a.m. with rice on your shirt, just became the last person on earth who knows where his $200 million is buried. You don't cry. You don't celebrate. You walk to the bathroom and you throw up. Level 1. The offer. 7 years earlier. Karachi, Pakistan, 2004. You're 24 years old. You work at a tiny currency exchange in Sadar Bazaar that smells like cigarettes and old paper. You make 8,000 rupees a month, about $90. You speak 4 languages. You have exactly $31 in your bank account. A man you've never seen sits down across from you at a roadside chai stall on a Tuesday afternoon. He's about 50, trimmed beard, pakol hat, quiet eyes. The kind of man you'd forget 5 seconds after he leaves. He doesn't introduce himself. He doesn't ask your name. He already knows it. He says 9 words to you. We need a quiet man. You're a quiet man. He slides a brown envelope across the table. You open it under the table. There's $5,000 in US, hundreds inside. More money than you've ever held in your life. He says, "That's a hello. Say yes, and there's 20,000 more next month." You ask one question. Who is we? He smiles for the first time. He takes a sip of his chai. He says, "You already know." And then he stands up and he leaves. You sit there for 38 minutes. You don't drink your tea. You don't move. When you finally walk home, the envelope hidden inside your shirt, you pass 3 police checkpoints. Your hands are shaking so hard you can barely hold the keys. That night, lying on your floor mattress, you stare at the ceiling and you do the math. $25,000 a month is $300,000 a year. Your father, a retired postman with diabetes, earned less than that in his entire 40-year career. By 6 a.m., you've made your decision. You meet the man at the same chai stall the next Tuesday. You say one word. Yes, you don't know it yet, but that single word just bought you the world's most dangerous secret. Level 2. The blood money. Here's what they don't tell you on day 1. The first time you carry $50,000 in cash through 3 countries, you almost piss yourself in the Karachi airport. The customs guy looks at you for 2 extra seconds. Your heart stops. Then he waves you through. By month 6, you're carrying $400,000. You don't even sweat anymore. By year 2, you're moving so much money, you stop counting bills. You weigh them. 1 pound of $100 bills equals exactly $45,400. You learn this because they make you memorize it. Because counting takes time, and time gets people killed. The system is called hawala. It's a 1,000-year-old underground banking network that operates entirely on trust. No computers. No paperwork, no names. You walk into a small jewelry shop in Dira, Dubai. You hand the old man behind the counter a stack of cash and a single word, a code word that changes every week. He nods. He picks up an old Nokia phone. He makes one call. 20 minutes later in Peshawar, Pakistan, a man walks into a butcher shop, says the same code word, and walks out with a gym bag full of rupees. No FBI, no Interpol, no CIA can trace it, because there's nothing to trace. The 9/11 hijackers were funded this way. The official 9/11 Commission report confirmed that about $400,000 to $500,000 moved through Dubai banks and hawala dealers without raising a single red flag. That money killed 2,977 Americans on a Tuesday morning. You think about that sometimes. Late at night, in hotel rooms, alone. By 2007, you've personally moved an estimated $14 million. Then comes the night you can't forget. You're in a small room in Quetta. The man who hired you in 2004 is sitting across from you, but he doesn't look quiet anymore. His hands are shaking. He hands you a black duffel bag. It's heavy, way too heavy for cash. You open it. Inside are 47 gold bars. Each one weighs a kilogram. Each one is worth about $35,000 at 2007 prices. Total in your hands, over $1.6 million in gold. He tells you to bury it. He gives you specific GPS coordinates near a town in southern Yemen. He tells you to leave that night. He tells you to never speak of this to anyone, ever. You ask him why he's shaking. He looks at you for a long time. Then he says, "Because you and I are the only two people who will know where this is." He's killed in a US drone strike 14 months later. You're now the only one. Level 3. Abbottabad. In 2009, the rules change. You stop getting calls about Yemen. You stop getting calls about Sudan. Now there's only one job, Abbottabad, a sleepy town in northern Pakistan, about 62 miles from Islamabad, less than a mile from the Pakistani military academy, basically Pakistan's West Point. The dumbest possible place to hide the world's most wanted man, which is exactly why he's there. You meet a man named Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti. He's the courier bin Laden's right hand, the only person allowed inside the compound besides the family. You meet him 4 times a year. Same petrol station, same brand of cigarettes, same 8-minute exchange. He hands you an envelope with instructions. You hand him an envelope with cash. You never speak. You never look at the compound. You never ask who's inside. But you know, the whole world is looking for him. The CIA has spent 10 years and over $3 trillion hunting this man. They have satellites. They have drones. They have the entire NSA listening to every phone call on Earth. And there he is, living in a $250,000 house behind 8-foot walls with his wives and kids, 2 miles from the Pakistani military. And you, a 28-year-old kid who used to make $90 a month, you're delivering his grocery money? Then comes May 1st, 2011. Your phone rings at 11:47 p.m. Dubai time. It's a man you've worked with for 6 years. His voice is shaking. He says 3 words. They got him. He hangs up. You turn on the TV. You sit on the edge of your bed. You don't blink for 40 seconds. 2 helicopters, 23 Navy SEALs, 40 minutes inside the compound. Bin Laden dead. Shot above the left eye. Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti dead. Killed in the first 30 seconds of the raid. His brother dead. Bin Laden's son Khalid dead. A woman shielding Bin Laden dead. 5 people, 5 deaths, 5 names. And then, sitting alone in your apartment at 3 a.m., you start counting. Every man between you and the money. The man who hired you in 2004 drone strike in Waziristan. 2008, the hawala dealer in Dubai found in a hotel bathtub in 2009. They called it a suicide. The compound contractor in Pakistan arrested by ISI, never seen again, 2011. The 2 other couriers who knew about Yemen, both dead. Different years, different ways, same result. Al-Kuwaiti dead, May 2nd, 2011. Bin Laden dead, May 2nd, 2011. You count the names on a napkin. 7 men. You're the 8th. You're the only one left alive. And that's when you realize they don't know about you. Yet. Level 4. The wait. It's been 15 years. You don't live in Dubai anymore. You don't speak Arabic in public anymore. You don't go to the same mosque twice. You change your phone every 90 days. You haven't called your mother since 2014. You learned what she died of through a Facebook post. You read it on a public library computer in a country you'd never been to before. You didn't cry until you got back to the hotel. The money is still there. Most of it. 47 gold bars in southern Yemen. You buried them yourself. You're the only person on Earth who knows the GPS. A safety deposit box in a Swiss bank that doesn't share information with anyone. $3 million in bearer bonds. You're the only signatory. 6 properties in Dubai owned by shell companies that lead to other shell companies that lead to nowhere. Total estimated value $90 million. Plus a few smaller stashes. A few accounts in countries that don't return CIA phone calls. In total, by your own estimate, somewhere around $200 million. Sitting, untouched, for 15 years. You could write it all down. 5 pages, GPS coordinates, account numbers, bank names, codes. You could walk into the US Embassy in any country tomorrow morning. They'd give you witness protection, a new name, a house in Phoenix, a pension. Or you could sell it to the Saudis, or the Iranians, or the Russians. Any of them would pay you tens of millions just to know what you know. Or you could give it back to the men who buried it, the ones still alive, the ones still angry. But you've done none of those things. For 15 years, You've done one thing. You've stayed quiet. Because here's the secret nobody tells you about. Carrying a secret this big. It's not that the secret is heavy. It's that the secret eats you. Slowly, quietly, year by year. You don't sleep more than 4 hours a night. You jump every time a car backfires. You haven't loved anyone in 15 years. Because love means trust, and trust means death. You're 42 years old. You look 60. And the worst part, the part that wakes you up at 3 a.m. screaming into a pillow is this. You don't even want the money. You never wanted the money. You wanted to be the quiet man who said yes to a stranger at a chai stall in 2004. And one day soon, you think someone will find you. A drone, a man with a gun, a poisoned cup of coffee at a hotel, and the secret will die with you, just like they wanted. History writes about the famous men, the killers, the presidents. History never writes about the quiet ones, the clerks, the couriers, the currency exchangers. Somewhere tonight, a 42-year-old man with a thick beard and a fuller frame is sitting in a small apartment in a city he's not supposed to be in. He's eating dinner alone. The TV is on mute. His phone hasn't rung in 9 days. He knows where $200 million is buried. He knows the GPS coordinates of every gold bar. He knows the account numbers of every Swiss vault. And the reason he's still alive, the only reason, is that he never told anyone. Not his wife. He doesn't have one. Not his mother. She's dead. Not even God. Because he stopped praying in 2007, the day he buried the gold.